Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Will I rise to speak on the University of Tasmania Protection of Land Bill 2024? And can I open by saying that this bill, through the amendments proposed, has gone from being a unique but effective check and balance on the disposal of surplus land, in essence public land, that could have helped settle a significant public disquiet and provide a pathway to resolution of legitimate community concerns over the liquidation of the UTAS Sandy Bay site, to an escalation of the anger over university decisions via a perversion of the planning process with no community consultation, no social and environmental assessment, and clearly no community consensus. That is a shame. The Liberals, via a complete about-face on the policy intent of their election campaign announcement, have snatched defeat from the jaws of victory and condemned the university to another era of mistrust, community concern and lost social licence. And it didn't need to be this way. It's my real fear that UTAS cannot sustain it. Just 22 days ago, when UTAS announced a very welcome plan for a future direction that included STEM at Sandy Bay, it was clear, and I quote, "To achieve this plan, the next major steps for the university are to secure funding from the Tasmanian and Australian governments to develop new STEM facilities at Sandy Bay." Well, what was the response to the request for funding, Minister? I take it, given where we are today, that nothing was forthcoming from your government. On summing up, can you confirm if the Tasmanian government is making a financial commitment to this UTAS STEM investment? The same day UTAS announced its reset, the public response from the government in a statement from Minister Ogilvie was, "We intend to strongly advocate to the Commonwealth to invest in Tasmanians' STEM-led future." What message does it send to Tasmanians if the Commonwealth is unwilling to invest in this vital sector? Well, Minister, what message does it send to Tasmanians if your government is unwilling to invest in this vital sector? The federal government is the lifeline for a UTAS STEM redevelopment, but as is normal, it would require a co-contribution from the state. But this state government won't stump up a red cent and seemingly not even offer a guarantee. While the Liberal government can find hundreds of millions of dollars to plan a stadium that Tasmanians neither need or want, spend $37 million a year on the racing industry, fork out $15 million for a shiploader for wood chip exports at Bell Bay, and pork barrel election promises like a $12 million for the world's tallest chocolate fountain, they'll shirk responsibility to make a contribution to build cutting-edge STEM facilities that will invest in our children's education and underpin our state's future, while saving the core of the Sandy Bay campus as promised. Through this debate today and the amendments forthcoming, the Liberal government demonstrates it's more willing to breach trust with Tasmanian voters, tear up its election commitment and pervert proper planning process to support a land sell-off than it is to find public funding to underpin infrastructure for tertiary public education. In the absence of leadership and investment from the state government, the solution for the university is to seek fast-track rezoning of land, to increase its value and enable an institutional pledge of co-contribution with the federal government, a pledge to go with the prayers and the pleas that the feds will actually come to the party. To be clear, process is perverted, community is sidelined and UTAS is pushed into a fire sale situation because the Liberals can't or won't invest in tertiary education infrastructure. Government priorities are skewed. Stadium, wood chippers, greyhounds and a chocolate fountain, amongst other things, all before STEM facilities at Sandy Bay, which gets nothing. This, it seems, is how we have got here. I'd like to acknowledge the community, staff, ex-staff and student campaign that over years has raised the issue of the campus sale and redevelopment and forced a situation where in an election context the government of the day felt compelled to act, as has UTAS. This is no small feat. It takes coordination, compulsion and commitment to take on an institution and the power and privilege that comes with incumbency and access to all the levers of money, decision-making and autonomy. I acknowledge Save UTAS and the plethora of independent expert voices adding their opinion. Some, with vested political or other interests, including people in this place, will malign the motivation, analysis or strategy of these people and seek to drag them down with pejorative names and insults. In reality, that language demeans you, not them. While each individual may have a myriad of motivating factors, collectively they have been pushing for greater transparency and accountability in UTAS decision-making and a rethink of the move into the city, a move planned to be funded by the intensive redevelopment of virtually the entire Sandy Bay campus, the lower sports fields being the exception. Today, those people will feel profoundly let down by the political process. the reversal of an election position that would have offered a vehicle to mitigate the disenfranchisement that comes with unilateral institutional decision-making, to a now likely outcome where the normal planning process is sidestepped and the institution gets what it wants after all, with no direct public engagement in the decision and no community recourse to do anything about it. But they should feel satisfied at least that in the face of the power imbalance and a UTAS decision made more than a decade ago, the full liquidation of the Sandy Bay campus has been stopped and a commitment extracted from UTAS to remain on a campus that I'm quite sure the equivalent of which any other university in the country would love to call home. This commitment is welcome, and those voices calling for UTAS to anchor back to Sandy Bay, to the Sandy Bay campus should be congratulated. Despite the disappointment of this debate, the amendments that will pass and the sidelining of genuine community concerns about issues that will affect their lives for decades to come, those who campaigned to preserve a campus in Sandy Bay should feel some satisfaction that the fact that they have helped turn the ship around and extracted an announcement that at least some UTAS faculties will remain at Sandy Bay. It's likely cold comfort, and today will only serve to deepen distrust and stoke scepticism. But take what positives you can and commit to continue to call for transparency, common sense, and a guarantee to consult with the community within which one operates. With over 74% of respondents in the 2022 elector poll opposing the move into the city, that move was untenable. While the university is statewide and students come from further afield, the view of people in whose community you operate and seek to continue to operate can only be ignored at your peril. As Tasmania's only university, we simply cannot afford UTAS to fail. We can't allow it to fail. In the many conversations I've had with stakeholders across the spectrum on the issue of the campus and the effect of this bill, I've been keen to stress two things. One, put aside how we got here, the baggage of the past and the processes and decisions that have set this train in motion and headed it well off the tracks. Don't dwell on the mistrust, but look for the positives and back in a new direction as a way to lock it in and give it the best chance of coming to fruition. And two, ignore the wider reforms still ahead. The work of the Legislative Council inquiry into the UTAS Act will report and recommend actions that relate to the constitution, functions and powers of the university, its council and academic senate. The inquiry is investigating the accountability of executive, fiscal and academic decision-making and how the Act protects and promotes academic freedom, independence and autonomy. These are big deliberations, fundamental to an institution, the sole institution setting the standard for tertiary education in the state. No one can deny the landscape in which universities have operated has profoundly changed over recent decades. Students with ever-growing HECS debts, the digital revolution, the international student bonanza, COVID, migration policy and the consistent underfunding of the sector has created challenges few other businesses have had to navigate. And universities have been forced to act as businesses, not just educational institutions, and that is a shame. Yeah. Many of us will disagree on this bill, but all of us will agree that Tasmania cannot afford to have its only university distracted and distrusted. We need the university to get back to the business of academic excellence, of research, teaching and graduating students equipped for the future and ready to make a contribution to Tasmania and to the world. We look forward to the work of the Legislative Council and understanding its view on the reforms needed to guide improvements in accountability, decision-making and its core business of tertiary education. When it comes, we Greens will work to do our bit to deliver the reforms needed to rebuild trust and the institution's place in our community and the world. Until then, we're dealing with the land, the campus, this bill and the Liberals' amendments. We acknowledge that the entire UTAS Sandy Bay landholding has land surplus to the university's needs. But jumping from this recognition to the conclusion that the Parliament can here today carve up the site and apply unilateral rezoning with no social or environmental assessment, no sense of the sewage, road and other infrastructure capacity and no community process is a travesty of proper process and treats local community with contempt. The Liberals are making a habit out of abandoning long-standing process to deliver special planning favours, aided and abetted by Labor. Last week, we had the parliamentary approval, contrary to the finding of the Planning Commission, of a private commercial development at Devonport. Responding to a newspaper advertisement, the Liberals suspended standing orders to ram through development approval with the support of Labor. Soon followed the development assessment panels, rejected in consultation, unanimously opposed by local government, and promoted only with shallow rhetoric and name-calling of anyone who raises legitimate concerns. The crossbench stood united against the bill. In its latest discussion paper and engagement report, the Hobart City Council and its Mount Nelson and Sandy Bay neighbourhood planning process, published in April this year, has explicitly responded to the UTAS campus issue and stated, I quote, "In developing the draft plan, Council will review the feedback received from community and consider a scenarios-based planning response which will contribute to the sustainable growth and development of the city. This role involves balancing a wide range of social and economic and environmental objectives." The Hobart City Council has been doing this replanning work. The Council will review the feedback. It will. There is still work to be done to land an approach that considers a holistic suite of interests and concerns and comes to a well thought through landing that can meet the needs of all. That's why we have a neighbourhood planning and well-established statutory rezoning process. So, Minister, a question for you on summing up is, what scenarios-based planning response have you undertaken, and how do you address the need for planning decisions like rezoning to balance the wide range of social, economic and environmental objectives, as was underway with the neighbourhood planning process? What analysis underpins the boundaries selected for the rezoning to inner residential? And as the campus is bounded on the Mount Nelson side by low-density residential, how was the decision to apply the inner residential zone, the highest density of all the residential zoning categories, made? And what analysis of social, economic and environmental objectives has been undertaken? Yesterday I received correspondence from UTAS that purports to pass off the zoning elements of this bill and the University Council's decision to pursue it as, I quote, supported by the City of Hobart's planning directions. And I don't think this quite stacks up. The City of Hobart is partway through a process, a statutory process, to plan for the neighbourhood and recommend the planning changes needed to deliver on that plan. More work is to be done. More consultation is needed. And it is fair to say that the issue of the campus redevelopment has attracted the greatest level of interest and the greatest level of concern. This mirrors the elector poll and it cannot be ignored. While the parliamentary rezone might seem like a victory for UTAS, turning adversity into opportunity and converting a government's commitment to constrain into a lifting of the lid to allow development down to 200 metres squared, I fear it is a Pyrrhic victory. No one, university, government or developer, can successfully operate in an environment where community is sidelined and real concerns remain. This rezone is overreach. Of course, we support housing, particularly innovative housing design options that are planned well. We always have and we always will. But no matter where housing is proposed, be it in Sandy Bay, in Bridgewater, in Campbelltown or in Smithton, it must be done right. It must be well planned, it has to be assessed, services must be able to cope, community must be involved. This development is not 2,000 homes as Labor waxes on about. Earlier, UTAS planning using the maximum density limits proposed, just over 1,000 units and townhouses on the sites proposed. We won't be lectured on housing by Labor. When you step up and deliver on your commitments to rein in short stay, you can have a crack. When you move to control rents and end no-cause evictions and push for minimum standards, I'll take your criticisms. Till then, they cast no shade. No matter how you put it, there's no justification for a fast-track rezone process that cuts out the community and delivers for a developer everything that they have been looking for. Commitments to deliver a UTAS deed of undertaking, capturing pledges to provide all proceeds for STEM, ensuring key worker accommodation, and possibly, it seems, depending on Homes Tasmania, social and affordable housing and supported living sounds good in theory, but we do not have that deed before us. While I accept at face value the UTAS intention to deliver a deed, it is surrounded by uncertainty. When will it be finalised? Perhaps the Minister can indicate the proposed approach of Homes Tasmania when it comes to the development opportunities forthcoming and how she thinks they would be reflected in a deed. What are you pushing for in that space, Minister? Concerns have been raised with me about the important STEM facilities located above Churchill Ave to the southeast of College Road. Here stands the Life Sciences building, the TIA glass houses, the seismic vault, and several buildings currently occupied by third parties with no intention or ability to move. It is my understanding that the CSIRO and TMAG Herbarium were deliberately co-located with UTAS to allow research interactions to be fostered in the state. While I note from this week's correspondence from Professor Black that said that the CSIRO and TMAG tenancies would be retained, I struggle to see how they coexist within an inner residential as opposed to a scientific and educational landscape. While I can accept at face value a UTAS commitment to ensure no facility is abandoned until suitable replacements are made, I question several things. What of the equipment that cannot or should not be moved and the recent investments in facilities like the biological sciences glasshouses and the molecular biology facilities? What if in the decades to come UTAS realises a need to expand its STEM capacity? Having its own cleared land ready to go gives options unavailable if sold off now. Lastly, what of the third-party facilities? What are the implications of having research and other facilities now located in an inner residential zone? I can assume they'll be approved as an existing non-compliant use, but what if they need to intensify their operations? What flexibility is there in the inner residential zone to accommodate a building expansion or other change deemed an intensification of use in the CSIRO or TMAG buildings? These are all questions that I am sure here today there are no clear answers for. If there are, I invite the Minister to articulate them in summing up. This sentiment is echoed by the National Tertiary Education Union, who, amongst other things, raised strategic concerns about the potential loss of STEM facilities, the loss of integral educational facilities and, I quote, a hollowed out Sandy Bay site. In correspondence received 2 days ago, Division Secretary Dr Ruth Barton writes, and I quote, to express our deep concerns regarding the proposed rezoning of the land above Churchill Avenue without proper public consultation. In addition to strategic concerns, Dr Barton also raises a list of issues, including, number 1, broken election promise and democratic process, 2, UTAS educational mission being compromised, 3, UTAS poor record of planning, number 4, housing market context, and number 5, consultation and transparency issues. She concludes stating that, I quote, we strongly urge that the rezoning process be conducted through proper planning channels with genuine community consultation, not dealt with solely by way of legislative change. The educational importance of the site and the government's pre-election commitments must be honoured to ensure transparency, accountability and the best outcomes for our staff, students and community. We Greens support this sentiment. Speaker, I am determined to give credit where credit is due, irrespective of our overall view on this bill when amended and the fact that we'll vote against it because of the embedded injustice of the parliamentary rezoning. As I have said publicly and will put on the record here, the commitment of UTAS to retain the central campus for STEM facilities is welcome. I acknowledge that changing institutional direction and remaking long-standing decisions can be difficult and takes the effort of individuals working both internally and externally, and I acknowledge that effort. We believe the decision to anchor back to Sandy Bay for STEM is the right and only tenable decision for UTAS. I know through conversations with TUSA, students are excited and embrace the opportunity to have a genuine involvement in the co-design of the facilities to be proposed. I call on UTAS to ensure this excitement is harnessed and students are involved in the early stages of co-design. In his correspondence to us as members received this week, UTAS Vice-Chancellor Rufus Black reiterated the public commitment to STEM facilities at Sandy Bay, including the complete retrofit of some existing buildings and the construction of some new facilities. We strongly support this decision and will get behind the university and its pitch for federal funding. I acknowledge and understand the scepticism of some in the community. Trust is long broken. But I'll bank the UTAS commitment as a significant step forward, and going forward, outside of this amended bill, I'll commit to doing everything I can to make it happen. But I flag here my own amendment to the bill as tabled. Setting a 99-year threshold for parliamentary scrutiny of any leasing arrangements is inadequate. 99 years is longer than life. In anyone's language, 99 years may as well be a sale, and in commercial terms, it is one. Community are underwhelmed by the 99-year loophole and afraid for the central campus given part of the past funding model for UTAS for the original redevelopment was via very long-term lease for redevelopment. To adopt a more normal commercial terms when it comes to a leasehold threshold, 30 years is more appropriate. This gives ample flexibility for commercial arrangements for the kind of third-party leaseholds a university campus would usually entertain, including hospitality and other staff or student services as business and research partnerships. Should it be necessary, viable and well costed and articulated, a leasehold of over 30 years could be presented to the Parliament for approval, and if well articulated, one would expect it to be positively received. Also welcome is the university's commitment to land justice. The university is located on the unceded lands of the Muanina, a nation who didn't survive colonisation and whose rights, hopes and aspirations live on through today's Palawa community. I take this opportunity to acknowledge elders past and the Aboriginal community of today. 5 years ago next week, UTAS took the profound and very welcome step of apologising for its role in wrongdoings towards Tasmanian Aboriginal people. Delivered in English and Palawakani, the language of the Aboriginal people, the University of Tasmania's apology acknowledged the deep wrongs committed against the Palawa people in its name and unreservedly apologised for them. It recognised that the university had been built on the proceeds of war and dispossession. Words can be hollow, and we've seen in this place a shameful political promise to make things better while actively making it worse. Promising a reset in the relationship with Aboriginal people while bulldozing on with four-wheel drive tracks on remote cultural landscape. Tabling a review report acknowledging Aboriginal heritage protection laws don't work, then letting 3.5 years pass with no legislative action to fix them. Meanwhile, supporting major developments on cultural landscapes along the way. The Kununyi Cable Car and Robbins Island development, a case in point. But in his correspondence to us this week, Professor Black stated the intention to return land to its rightful owners and take tangible action to give real meaning to the sentiment of its apology. I quote, "In addition, we have commenced discussions with the Aboriginal Land Council of Tasmania about a handback of the bushland above the parcels identified for rezoning in this legislation, which has always been intended for protection given its environmental values, in recognition that this land was never ceded. We are committed to working with the ALCT towards a memorandum of understanding to govern the work required to facilitate this handback." This is groundbreaking action that gives me some hope that the uni will lead other institutions and the Tasmanian government to return land to Aboriginal ownership. It's 20 years since public land was returned to Aboriginal people, and this government has ignored opportunities to deliver and rejected formal land claims from Land Council, the statutory body established to receive returned public land on behalf of Palawa people. While private landowners like Jane and Tom Tenniswood at Little Swan Port and the Tasmanian Land Conservancy have stepped up where government won't, it is so refreshing to see a public institution respond to the formal claim for the return of land. First put as a formal land claim in 2021, the Aboriginal Land Council has patiently waited for a positive response from UTAS, and to see it reflected in the formal correspondence to members of this Parliament is welcome indeed. Land justice on this site not only presents opportunities for Aboriginal people to engage in land management interpretation, it gives the chance for local people to engage with Aboriginal land and the logical, educational and cultural cross-pollination with the work of the university. I look forward to the MOU and adding the Greens' support to the consultation process articulated by Professor Black. I also welcome the retention of the sports fields at Olinda Grove for ongoing community use. These were originally proposed for redevelopment, including for tourism. While bushfire and other issues seem to have scotched the development plans, the fact that these facilities will remain available for community use is a positive development. So, Speaker, to recap, while I pull out some positives to finish up on, the Greens will not support the amendments or the bill. The proposed amendments will serve to reinforce distrust in politics and the frustration so many in our community feel when the electoral commitments of their representatives do not play out. Parliamentary rezoning sets another terrible precedent where Parliament overreaches into the planning system to profoundly change the rules with no assessment, no credible analysis and no community consultation. This is a desperate last-ditch effort driven by past failures and a government missing in action, spending available funds on perverse priorities. More prepared to ride roughshod over community in its own election commitment than stump up the funding requested by UTAS, government demonstrates just how cooked it is. Broke, acquiescent and profoundly dishonest. The community have been blindsided by this announcement. They expected a bill that would mean Parliament had to approve any land sales from the Sandy Bay campus. Instead, they got approval. To be clear, for those watching or reading this, we Greens will vote to support this bill through the second reading because, as drafted and tabled in this House, the bill does the job it was created to do. It offers parliamentary oversight for the disposal of public land gifted to the university 70 years ago for the purposes of higher education. But we will oppose the foreshadowed amendments from the government. As with the Stony Rise development approvals, we will not support a parliamentary rezone. It's dodgy, it's self-defeating, it is uninformed and it is unfair. If the amendments get up, we'll vote against the bill. Speaker, we all want UTAS to succeed. We all want it to be as good as it possibly can be, to enjoy the support of the community, to offer quality courses and engage in cutting-edge research. No one can deny recent years have been expensive and damaging for UTAS and us as a community. Few would disagree that there is significant reform needed to address the failures in the Act. But one thing is clear in our minds, ramming through special approval for a significant rezoning of public land with no substantiation, no public consultation and no recourse is no way to create the platform needed for the university to claw back the credibility, trust and collaboration needed to succeed for this state.